listen, we're here. We're in. Gregg Berhalter's done. When it's all said and done, the dust settles. And actually, first we need to get up and give a standing ovation to all the people who never bought a Michelob Ultra in the last week and a half, who canceled their internet subscription, who chose to buy a
Sold their
completely
Volkswagens.
different car instead of a Volkswagen. Like, big ups to the 6 people who did that. Goodness me, you guys, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. Nobody can at all say that the U.S. men's national team is not purely American, because there's nothing more American than a massive company slash corporation making a decision and let people think that they influenced them in making that decision because they were on social media. So big ups the men's national team for that. Let's then chat legacy. Dust settles. It's all said and done. The USMNT stand accounts have gone out and they've felt the grass. They've seen the sun. What is Gregg Berhalter's legacy by the end of this debacle?
Can you remind me again? Was it after the World Cup where they made the second rehire for him?
Yes. So after the World Cup, he was like his contract expired. I guess they didn't re-sign him right away, and then he came back after his contract expired.
Okay, gotcha. I want to say that if the Gregg Berhalter legacy had cut off at that point and he was done after the World Cup, I'd see a much stronger argument for saying that his time with the US was definitely not that bad. Lots of good points during his legacy during that first stint with the USMNT. Gold Cup win with I guess I'll say like undervalued roster because it wasn't your typical like full European team.
Like
He
your
brought in
C
like
team,
a
wasn't it?
what'd you say?
It's like the C team, wasn't it? Wasn't that
It was like the all
yeah, we like
MLS team. I
Jackson
mean,
Ewell playing center mid.
well, I mean he found some like guys that would become A team players from that. Like
Sure.
Walker Zimmerman and
Yep.
Miles Robinson.
Sure.
I think Matt Turner kind of that was his
That was
standout
his
was that
break.
Gold
Yeah,
Cup.
you're absolutely right.
Um, but yeah, that was a great Gold Cup run from him with our C team at the time, as you're saying. And then couple of really like insanely memorable wins during that era too. I'll never forget that 3-2 Nations League final over Mexico. One of the best games that we've probably ever seen in our lifetime. Uh, in the World Cup, it was a little bit disappointing considering how we showed against the Netherlands, but at the end of the day, we did still get out of our group. Um, Definitely could have asked for more, but at the same time, it's not the absolute biggest letdown considering we were still able to get out of the group. Obviously, we want to strive for more, but it was at least a step in a better direction. I would have I would hear the argument for saying that his time with the US was not that was pretty solid. But then that second stint with the team, I just feel like was terrible. Like it was brutal. Like I don't feel like he did anything really too memorable in the second stint. I mean, I know he actually did. I can't even remember. Was he in charge for when we won the Nations League final? I know he didn't coach a few games in the Nations League to get us there. I think he might have been in charge for the final.
No, Greg had it was BJ's
Oh, wait, was he there for the full way?
yeah, BJ had
I
the
think it was
the
Mexico and
full
Canada.
Nations League, but
Okay,
um, Greg right now has the 2019-2020 Nations League and the Gold Cup in 21. Then BJ Callahan had the 22 Nations League.
gotcha. Okay, I couldn't remember if those Mexico Canada games were quarterfinal, semifinal, or if they were semifinal, final. But that mean that taints it even worse the second stint. So then, I'm guessing he won nothing then, and got us knocked down the group stages at Copa America. So everyone's going to remember that second stint from his time with the US. People aren't going to remember him for anything he did in the first stint. And so it's going to leave a very bad taste in people's mouth. I mean, you could see it already. I mean, just look at any tweet regarding Berhalter on Twitter, and you will see how people feel about his stint as USMNT manager. Maybe people will look back on it with a little bit kinder views now that he's gone and, maybe give it a little bit of time for the dust to settle. But I don't really blame people for the way that they feel. That second stint was brutal and it was a huge letdown. I feel like the team has gone backwards. And because it's the last things he was doing before he was gone, I think it's what people will remember from him.
You're really good at just combining all the talking points into one. Because half of that whole thing was what did his second cycle have an impact on?
Well, you asked me what his legacy was. His legacy is part of the first and the second part.
Yeah. So that's fair. That's fair. For me, and we've talked about this before, Gregg did exactly what he was hired to do the first time. He took a young team that had to come up relatively quickly because they were basically cycling out everybody from 2018. And through pure grit and determination, he turned them into the best team in the Confederation in CONCACAF. And you can say, "Oh, well, that's Mexico's bad and Canada's was terrible." Yeah, they brought him in, and that was his job: was to not be worse than the worst people around him, and he did his job. He got out of the group in 22. You can say maybe it was a bit lucky. You can say, you can say a lot of things about it, and you'd probably be right about it. But he did his job. I agree with you that when he came back, it was the wrong move, and we've talked about that too. That all of this stuff is really not great. But yeah, if you look at just records, 44 wins, 17 draws, 13 losses, I think is how that's read. I think statistically, the numbers are all in his favor. He created a really strong group against not so strong opponents, right? But we can't just look at stats. So we know that he doesn't have a lot of those big wins. We know that he doesn't perform well away from home. We know all of that. That's not a thing. So to me, Gregg Berhalter, legacy wise, is a guy who did his job and was asked to do too much afterwards. Because when he came in, he took, as we mentioned, he took that really young team that really didn't have a lot of international experience and he turned them into the best team in CONCACAF. However, he, trying to think of the right way to phrase this. This is why it's tough to do it unedited or right off the bat with no prep, because I want to phrase it right so I can get my points across. Where he didn't take them to the next level. He didn't get them better, I think is a way to put that. Like he got them to a point where they were the best, but he could never get them, in the Confederation, but he could never get them to the point of being the best of North and South America or in the top 5 of North and South America. And we saw that in the Copa, right? Like he got them to a point, and it reminds me very similarly of Gary Smith at Nashville. He did all that he could with the group that he had. Then he was, and we've talked about that too. He then was outmatched with their ability to understand the game and his ability to coach it. So to me, he is not, people are going to say, oh, he's the best statistical manager we've ever had. I don't think Klinsmann was better than him. I think they each had their own problems. I don't think Gregg is the best coach we've ever had. I mean, statistically, you can always make the argument for it, but if you watch the games, you understand what that really means. I think he did his job and was here too long, as you mentioned. So, and I'm sure people will disagree. And I think you mentioned too, everybody's going to remember the failures more than the successes. And that's totally, totally fair, especially in the world of social media where the only thing you can remember is the last 2 minutes. But if you look as a whole, what he took over and where he got them to, he did his job. And that needs to be taken into account for sure.
For me, the stats really don't mean much until I can see another manager come in with the same group in the same situation or similar situation and see what their stats look like. Because to me, he's coming in with the strongest team that we've ever had. And I know that's probably not the best take right now, considering where the national team is at the moment. But I still think this is, at least technically speaking, the best team we've ever had. And the rest of the region, I shouldn't say the rest of the region. Canada's probably kind of at their one of their best moments too, but Mexico is like way below where Mexico used to be. So to be able to just beat up on teams in the region, like Costa Rica, no Keylor Navas anymore is a huge hit for them. Like he was playing against teams that were at some of their worst points. And so it felt a bit like stat padding. So I want to see what like another manager does with the similar situation before I'm like I don't think it's fair to compare him against like Bruce Arena or Bob Bradley and what they did with the USMNT because they were just working in my opinion, a completely different situation than what Gregg was. Even if Gregg is like statistically the best ever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think there's a and that's the only way to make a fair comparison, right? And